My brother called me at 9:18 on a Wednesday night. Marcus does not call at night. This is not a rule we have ever discussed, but it is a pattern I have tracked across 11 years of adulthood, and it has held without exception. Marcus calls on Sunday mornings, between 7 and 8:30, because he is always awake early, and he has calculated that this window exists before his day becomes unmanageable. He calls to report, he does not call to ask. And he certainly does not call on a Wednesday at 9:18. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. I looked at the screen, looked at the basket of unfolded shirts, set the basket down. "We have a problem with the business," he said. No greeting. Marcus moves fast when he is worried. In the operating room, speed is correct. In conversation, it skips the part where you establish that the other person is there. "Okay," I said, "tell me." He told me. And while he was talking, while he was explaining the name of the German supplier and the clause they were claiming and the dollar amount they were threatening and the fact that our father's attorney had called that afternoon and that the situation was, Marcus said, potentially significant while all of this was happening. I was standing in my kitchen doing arithmetic I had not expected to be doing. The arithmetic was this. I had the document he was looking for. I had photographed it 2 years ago, on a Saturday in October, in my father's back office, while everyone else was in the front of the shop eating my father's 69th birthday cake. I had 92 photographs from that afternoon. The document Marcus needed was probably photograph 47 or 48. I had not opened that folder in 2 years, but I knew what was in it. That is the job. Knowing what is in it. My name is Nadia Voss. I am 38 years old, and I work in records compliance for a consulting firm that serves law firms, pharmaceutical companies, and financial institutions. What I do, translated into the version my family has always used, is I help companies figure out what they have, where they keep it, and what happens if the wrong person reads it or the right document disappears. The version my family uses is simpler. Nadia is very organized. It's a shame she doesn't use it for something more important. Marcus is 42, and a pediatric surgeon. He operates on children. When he tells people what he does, they understand immediately what it costs and what it gives back. I understand why that is. I do not begrudge him the clarity of it. I only notice that the kind of work that holds things together in the background, the work that keeps records from disappearing, agreements from being misread, decades of relationships from collapsing into a single disputed paragraph, that work does not get the same clarity. It is only visible when it is absent. 2 years ago, at my father's birthday party, Marcus told me that my father's shop did not need a compliance department. He said this at dinner, in front of my father and 2 family friends, with the gentle certainty of someone who has never had to wonder whether they know what they're talking about. My father changed the subject. I did not respond. I went to the back office after dessert and spent 3 hours photographing every document in the filing cabinet while the birthday candles burned down in the front. I want to tell you about what Marcus said when I called him back the next morning to tell him I had the document he needed. His first words were not, "What does it say?" His first words were, "Why do you have that? And I want to ask you something before I tell you the rest. Have you ever done work that no one asked for? That no one knew you had done? That no one thanked you for, work that existed quietly in the background of someone else's life, preventing things from breaking that they did not know were close to breaking? Have you ever been in the position of knowing you are the only person who can solve a problem, and understanding that solving it will not answer the deeper question, which is not, can she help, but has she ever mattered? I am not going to tell you this story ends with a revelation in a boardroom. There is no boardroom. There is no dramatic vote. No one is arrested. No one is publicly humiliated. No one writes a statement of apology that gets posted online. What there is, a legal dispute that takes 4 months to resolve. A man who says thank you once, formally, without looking at me. And a conversation with my father in his back office, at the end of October, that lasted about 20 minutes, and did not fix everything, and did not need to. My father's retirement was on a filing cabinet I had photographed at his 69th birthday party. The question is not whether I saved it. The question is what happened when I did. I should tell you what I actually do. The office where I work is on the 4th floor of a building that was probably impressive in the 1990s, and is now simply adequate. My desk is in the corner nearest the window. It has a view of the parking structure across the street, which I do not find depressing. I find it useful. I can tell, by which cars are in which spaces, what time various colleagues have arrived and whether a certain difficult client is visiting. My desk contains 3 monitors, one of which is specifically for reviewing document images, a portable scanner the size of a hardcover novel, a stack of legal pads I use for notes because I think more clearly when I am writing by hand, and a collection of small labeled folders in a rainbow of colors that represents the current phase of every active project. Color coding is not unusual in my field. My specific system is unusual enough that 2 other people in the firm use a version of it, which they arrived at independently after watching me for a few months. I did not point this out to either of them. I noted it in the margin of a legal pad and moved on. What I actually do, when I am doing it, is this. I look at what an organization has accumulated over time: agreements, correspondence, reports, certifications, retention schedules, destruction logs, and I figure out what shape that accumulation is in. Whether the right things are being kept, whether the wrong things are being kept too long, whether what a company says it has and what it actually has match each other. They frequently do not. The gap between those 2 things is where problems live. My job is to close the gap before the problem announces itself. The work requires a specific tolerance for other people's disorder. You cannot be horrified by it, or you will spend all your energy on horror and none on the work. You cannot be indifferent to it, or you will miss the detail that tells you why the disorder exists. You have to find it interesting. I find it interesting. I have always found it interesting. My mother was the same way. She died 7 years ago, from a cancer that moved quickly and announced itself late, the way things do when they have been happening quietly for a long time. Her name was Helena. She taught middle school mathematics for 26 years, and she had a specific way of organizing the household bills, insurance documents, school records, and correspondence that I absorbed without noticing until after she was gone, and I was helping my father find paperwork, and I realized I already knew the system because I had been inside it my entire childhood. Her system had a logic to it that was not obvious until you understood the logic. Then it was completely obvious. The bills were organized not by type, but by which party could terminate the relationship and what notice period was required. Insurance was organized not by policy but by which policies affected which assets. Correspondence was organized by whether the sender was someone my parents needed or someone who needed them, a distinction that sounds simple and is, in fact, the most important organizing principle in any information system. I think about her every time I open a filing cabinet that someone else has organized. My father is Konstantin Voss. He is 72. He came to this country with his family when he was 9, with German and Russian in his head and almost no English, and he built, over the next 30 years, a specialty import business selling European ceramics, kitchenware, and home goods to restaurants, interior designers, and a small loyal group of private customers who found his catalog in the 1990s and never stopped ordering. He is not a rich man, he is a careful man. The business is his retirement account, his identity, and his daily reason to get out of bed. He is at the shop 6 days a week. He has been at the shop 6 days a week for 30 years. His health has been declining mildly for 2 years, nothing catastrophic. Slower in the morning, tired by mid-afternoon, a cardiac appointment every 6 months. He does not complain about it. He mentions it once, adjusts around it, and continues. Marcus began helping with the business about 18 months ago. He attends supplier meetings when he can. He looks at the quarterly numbers. He has strong opinions about the inventory management software, which he has tried to upgrade twice. My father defers to him because Marcus has the self-assurance of someone who has never had occasion to doubt his competence, and at 72, with a cardiac condition and a business to manage alone, having someone confident nearby is its own kind of comfort. I understand this. I do not resent it. I resent the dinner. 2 years ago, at my father's 69th birthday, the one with the chocolate cake that Greta, my father's assistant, made from a recipe she has refused to share. For 22 years Marcus and I were at the dinner table, and I mentioned, because I had been in the back office that afternoon and could not help noticing that the business's filing situation was concerning. Contracts mixed with correspondence, vendor agreements missing signatures, a pile of documents I could not categorize on site because they had been stacked on top of the relevant files rather than integrated into them. I said, the filing system in the back office needs attention. Some of the older vendor contracts should probably be reorganized, and I'm not certain the retention schedule is up to date. Marcus looked at me across the table. He had a glass of wine in his hand. He was relaxed in the way he is when he is certain he understands a situation. Nadia, he said. Dad's shop isn't a pharmaceutical company. It doesn't need a compliance department. He said it the way you say something obvious to someone who has confused a small problem for a large one. He said it gently. He thought he was being kind. 2 of my father's friends were at the table. My father looked at his plate. Then he looked up and said something about the cake being good this year, and the conversation moved on. After dessert, I went to the back office. I had about 3 hours before people would start wondering where I was. The room smelled like the cardboard of old boxes and the faint chemical smell of old toner cartridges. On the windowsill, in a terracotta pot, no larger than a coffee mug, a rosemary plant grew with the particular conviction of things that have been tended long enough that they know what they are doing. My father has trimmed it with kitchen scissors every Monday for 15 years. It was the most organized thing in the room. I photographed every document in the filing cabinet, all 4 drawers, 92 photographs. I organized my own notes in a system that mirrored the physical layout, cross-referenced by vendor, date, and contract type. I did not tell anyone I was doing this. I did not plan to. I did it because I could not be in a room with a filing system in that condition without doing something about it. I put the photographs on a backup drive. I labeled the drive. I put it in my work bag, where it went with me every day, and I did not look at it again for 2 years. What Marcus explained, on the Wednesday night call, was this. A German supplier called Dressel Imports was claiming that a distribution agreement made in 2019 had included a right of first refusal clause, meaning that if my father ever contracted with a competing importer, the same product category, Dressel had the right to match the offer before he could finalize with anyone else. My father had not followed this process. He had contracted with a new supplier, completing the arrangement in the spring. Dressel was now demanding either compensation or the unwinding of the new contract. The exposure, Marcus said, was potentially $180,000 in damages, plus the legal cost of unwinding the new agreement, plus disruption to the new supplier relationship my father had spent 8 months building. My father's attorney, Jonah Park, had reviewed the situation and told my father that the outcome depended entirely on what the original 2019 agreement actually said. The problem was that the physical copy of the 2019 Dressel agreement was not where it was supposed to be. Greta had looked for 2 days. The filing cabinet in the back office had been partially reorganized at some point in the past 18 months. Marcus had done this, with good intentions and limited time, during a weekend visit. And the reorganization had not been documented. So we need the original document, Marcus said. Or we're arguing about contract language we can't prove. Right, I said. Do you know anything about their contracts from that period? I stood in my kitchen. The laundry basket was still on the counter. A shirt sleeve was hanging over the edge. I might, I said. Let me check something. I'll call you back. I sat down at my desk. I opened the backup drive. I navigated to the folder from October 2 years ago. 92 photographs. I had organized them by filing cabinet drawer. The vendor agreements were in the second drawer. Dressel alphabetical, under D would be in the first third of that drawer. I found photograph 46. Then 47. Photograph 47 was the 2019 Dressel distribution agreement. 4 pages. All 4 photographed clearly. Standard header, governing law clause, payment terms, territory definition, renewal conditions. I read it twice. There was no right of first refusal clause. Not in the body. Not in the writers. Not in the signature page addendum. Dressel's claim was based on a provision that did not exist in the actual agreement they had signed. I sat with that for a moment. Outside, a car went past on the street below. The sound faded. I looked at the photograph of the agreement on my screen. Then I looked at my phone. Then I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. I have it, I said. Pause. You have what? The 2019 Dressel agreement. I have a photograph of it. Another pause. Longer. Why? Marcus said. Do you have a photograph of Dad's Dressel agreement? I had been prepared for surprise. I had not been fully prepared for the specific quality of suspicion in his voice, not aggressive, not cruel, just wary in the way that people become when they realize something has been happening that they didn't know about. I photographed the filing cabinet at Dad's birthday party 2 years ago, I said. The one where you told me the shop didn't need a compliance department. The silence that followed was the particular silence of someone reorganizing their understanding of a situation they thought they already understood. You photographed the files, he said. I photographed everything in the filing cabinet. All 4 drawers. 92 photographs. I've had it on a backup drive since then. You didn't mention this. You told me the shop didn't need a compliance department. He did not respond immediately. I could hear, faintly, what might have been a television in the background of wherever he was. Then he said, What does the Dressel agreement say? There is no right of first refusal clause, I said. It's a standard 4-page distribution agreement. No such provision exists. Another silence. This one felt different, less suspicious, and more like the silence of someone absorbing information that is simultaneously a relief and a problem. Can you send it to Jonah? He said. Yes. Tonight? I'll do it now. I sent the photographs to Jonah Park at 9:47 p.m. I CC'd Marcus. I labeled the email clearly. Dressel Imports 2019 Distribution Agreement Photographs taken October date, Voss Family Business Back Office. Jonah replied at 10:12. This is exactly what we need. Thank you. Marcus did not reply until the next morning. His message said, thanks. One word. No punctuation. He had capitalized the T. I did not go to sleep immediately. After sending the email, I sat at my desk. The laundry basket was still on the counter. I had been planning to finish folding it when Marcus called and I had not returned to it since. I opened the backup drive. I had not looked at those photographs in 2 years. Not because I had forgotten them, I knew they were there. Knew approximately what they contained. The way you know the contents of a drawer you have not opened in a while but that you organized yourself. You know without looking. But that night, I looked. Photograph 1. The filing cabinet from the outside. Closed. 4 drawers. A strip of masking tape on the top drawer in Greta's handwriting. Current year vendors. I had photographed it before opening anything, because that is the protocol document the state before you alter it. Photographs 2 through 23. The first drawer. Vendor agreements, current year. Most of them in good order. A few without signatures on the third page, which is either an oversight or a deliberate choice. I could not determine without more context. I had noted it 2 years ago, and the note was still in the margin of the legal pad I had started that afternoon and never finished. Photographs 24 through 51. The second drawer. This was the one Marcus had reorganized. I could see, looking at the photographs now with the knowledge of what the reorganization had done, exactly where the logic had broken. He had moved vendor agreements from the third drawer into the second drawer, reasoning that they were the same category. They were not the same category. The third drawer had contained times historical times, vendor agreements expired, superseded, or closed, while the second drawer was for current and active. He had interleaved them without knowing there was a distinction, because no one had told him there was a distinction, because the person who had noticed there was a distinction had been told her expertise did not apply. Photograph 47. The 2019 Dressel Agreement. 4 pages, clearly photographed. Standard header. No right of first refusal clause anywhere in the 4 pages. I zoomed in on the signature page. My father's signature. The Dressel representative's signature. Date of execution. No writer pages. No amendments. 4 pages, complete, clean. I sat with that for a while. Then I kept going. Photographs 52 through 78. The third drawer. Historical agreements, as I had understood them. But also, in the back of the drawer, a folder I had photographed but not fully read at the time. Correspondence from 2016 to 2018, relating to a lease negotiation I had not known about. I read it now. It was complete. The negotiation had concluded. A 3-year extension had been signed. The extension had renewed automatically in 2021. All of this was in the drawer. None of it was indexed anywhere I could find. This was not a crisis. This was the ordinary state of a filing system maintained by one person over 30 years, with good intentions and no training, who had managed to keep everything but had never found the time to make it findable by anyone else. The information was there. It just required someone to know where to look. Photographs 79 through 92. The fourth drawer. Paper supplies, blank forms, a box of business cards from 2009, an instruction manual for the register, and, at the very back, a manila envelope labeled in my father's handwriting, Helena Household, to keep. I had photographed the outside of the envelope. I had not opened it. It was sealed. I looked at that photograph for a long time. Then I closed the folder and made a list. The list was of everything in the filing cabinet that would need attention. The expired vendor agreement, the lease file, 2 agreements without signatures, a set of customs documents in the wrong order, the manila envelope I had not looked inside, which was not my business and which I noted as Times Personal, Constantine Retain. The list took 40 minutes. By the time I finished, it was almost midnight. The laundry was still on the counter. I folded it standing up, thinking about the second drawer and Marcus and the difference between a current agreement and a historical one, and then I went to bed. The lawyer meeting was on a Thursday afternoon. Jonah Park's office is in a building 4 blocks from the courthouse, the kind of building that has a lobby with a security desk that has not needed to turn anyone away in 20 years but maintains the desk on principle. His office is on the 3rd floor. The hallway smells like old carpet and central heating. The meeting was at 2 o'clock. I arrived at 1:50. My father was already there. He was sitting in a chair near the window, wearing the gray wool blazer he puts on when he has a meeting that matters, and he was looking at his hands. Marcus arrived at 2:02. He was in scrubs under an open jacket, which meant he had come directly from the hospital. He glanced at me when he came in, briefly, and sat in the chair across from our father. Jonah came in at 2:03. He set 2 copies of a document on the table. "I'll keep this concise," he said. Jonah believes that every minute in his office is a minute someone is paying for, and that the most courteous thing he can do is not waste it. The photographs Nadia provided are clear documentation of the executed 2019 agreement. The agreement contains no right of first refusal clause. Dressel's claim is therefore without basis in the contract language. He paused. "I've informed their attorney of this. I expect they will withdraw within 2 to 3 weeks once they've reviewed their own records." My father nodded. Something in his face had been held at a certain tension for 2 weeks, and it changed now, released slightly, the way a window releases when you open it on a warm day. "And the new supplier contract?" Marcus said. "Unaffected," Jonah said. "There is nothing in the 2019 Dressel agreement that restricts Constantin from contracting with competitors. The claim was either a misunderstanding of their own agreement, or an attempt to leverage an ambiguity that does not, in fact, exist." "Which do you think it was?" I said. Jonah looked at me. "I never speculate about opposing counsel's motivations in a meeting," he said. "Outside a meeting, I would say, probably both." Marcus looked at the copy of the document on the table. The photographs of photograph 47 through 50, printed and stacked, clear and legible. He looked at them for a moment without touching them. "How did you have these?" he said. Not to Jonah. "To me, I photographed them 2 years ago," I said. "You said that." He paused. "I mean, why? What were you thinking?" I considered how to answer this in a room with my father's attorney at a meeting that was costing several $100s per hour. "I was thinking that the filing system needed attention," I said, "and that I had the means to document it. So I did." Marcus looked at the photographs again. Then he looked at Jonah. "This is admissible as documentation? The chain of custody is clear?" Jonah said, "It's a civil dispute, not a criminal proceeding. The photographs are clear, dated, and provided by a credible party with professional expertise in records documentation. Dressel's alternative would be to contest the photographs' accuracy, which would require them to produce their own copy of the agreement, which, if it is what we believe it is, will confirm our position." Marcus nodded. He asked 2 more questions about the timeline. Jonah answered them. My father said very little. When we stood to leave, my father shook Jonah's hand and thanked him, in the formal way he thanks people for work he considers serious. Marcus thanked Jonah and took a copy of the document for his own files. I took the other copy. In the elevator, the 3 of us were briefly together in the small space of it. Marcus looked at the floor, numbers changing. My father looked at his hands again. I looked at the copy of the Dressel agreement in my hands, 4 pages. Clean, no right of first refusal clause anywhere. The elevator reached the lobby. We stepped out. My father put his hand briefly on my shoulder as we walked through the lobby. Not a hug, not a speech, just a hand on a shoulder for 3 or 4 steps, and then we were through the door and in the street, and the moment was over. I want to tell you about a Tuesday afternoon in my office. This was the week after the phone calls. I was working on a records destruction review for a pharmaceutical client, going through a list of documents flagged for potential destruction and confirming which ones fell within the retention schedule and which ones needed legal hold. Review. It is the kind of work that looks, from the outside, like reading a very long list very carefully and occasionally writing hold or approve next to things. What it actually requires is understanding which documents could become relevant to something that has not happened yet, anticipating the shape of a future problem from the shape of a current record. It is the opposite of reactive. It is the closest thing to pattern recognition that does not involve an algorithm. A colleague named Priscilla knocked on my door frame. She is 29 and has been with the firm for a year and a half. And she approaches most work problems the way a person approaches a locked door, by trying the obvious methods first, in sequence, and then coming to me. "You doing okay?" she said. "Working," I said. "You have that face," she said. I looked up. "What face?" "The one where you're 3 floors below us," she said. "Are you thinking about work or something else?" "Work," I said. And then, because she was still standing there, "And something else," she nodded and left. I thought about that for a moment. The way it was possible to be doing 2 things at once, the pharmaceutical retention schedule on my screen, and, underneath it, the specific memory of Marcus's voice on the phone saying times, "Why do you have that?" And how both of these things were, in a specific sense, the same work. The work of knowing what something contains. The work of understanding what the records show. The pharmaceutical documents on my screen were clean, everything correctly dated, every document where it was supposed to be. I returned to them and did not think about Marcus again until I was in the car. I went to my father's shop on a Thursday afternoon. I had not told him I was coming. This is different from Marcus's approach. Marcus does not call ahead at my father's shop because he has made himself a daily fixture there, and calling ahead would feel formal. I do not call ahead because I was never made a fixture there, and calling ahead would invite a response, and the possible responses include one where my father says it is not a good time, which I prefer not to hear. The shop is on a street of small commercial buildings, 2 blocks from the old train station. It has a narrow front with a painted wooden sign my father had made in 1998 and has repainted 3 times since. The front window currently displays a set of cream-colored bowls with a blue rim and a ceramic oil cruet beside them. The display changes when Greta suggests it should, which is approximately every 6 weeks. Greta was at the front desk when I came in. She has worked for my father for 22 years. She is 64 and wears reading glasses with bright orange frames that she claims she chose because she had stopped having opinions about what other people thought of her appearance sometime around her 55th birthday. She looked up when I came in. "He's in back," she said. "He knows about the Dressel thing. Jonah called this morning. How is he?" Greta considered this with the specific precision of someone who has watched a person closely for 22 years and does not waste words. "Relieved," she said. "And quiet." I went to the back. The office had not changed since October 2 years ago, except that the boxes in the corner had been rearranged. Marcus's reorganization, the one that had displaced the Dressel agreement, and a second chair had appeared near the door, which suggested that the office was now being used for conversations rather than only for solitary work. The rosemary plant was on the windowsill. It was denser than I remembered, trimmed back on both sides in a way that suggested someone had been paying attention to it. My father was at his desk. He was looking at a piece of paper, but when I came in he set it down and looked at me instead. He is not a demonstrative man. He shows things through stillness, through the specific quality of attention he gives to something when it matters. "Nadia," he said. "Hi, Dad." He gestured at the new chair. I sat. The ceramic bowl was on the desk, in the corner nearest him. Cream-colored, blue rim, the size of a cereal bowl. He had used it for years to hold small things: a thumb drive, a spare key, the clips from the bags of coffee he ordered from a supplier in Vienna. Today it held 2 paper clips and a coin. "Jonah called," my father said. "I know. How did it go?" "Good. He thinks Dressel will withdraw when they see the document." He paused. "You had the document?" "Yes." "From the birthday?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, not uncomfortable processing. "Marcus told me you had photographed the files," he said. "I did." He was not sure how to explain this. "How does he explain it?" My father looked at the desk. "He says you were being you." I thought about this. Being you times was not an explanation. Exactly. But from Marcus, in the context of my father's voice repeating it, it had the texture of something he had said without fully knowing what it meant, which was, perhaps, progress. "Do you want to know why I did it?" I said. "Tell me," my father said. So I told him. I told him about the filing cabinet as I had found it 2 years ago, the contracts and correspondence interleaved, the vendor agreements without signatures, the stack of unfiled papers on top of the folders rather than inside them. I told him I could not be in a room with a system in that condition without doing something about it. I told him it had taken 3 hours. I told him I had 92 photographs on a backup drive. I did not tell him about Marcus's comment at the dinner table. I had decided, on the drive over, that this was not the moment for that. The moment for that had probably been 2 years ago, and I had not taken it then, and creating it now would make the conversation about Marcus instead of about the filing cabinet, about a wound instead of a fact. My father listened to all of this. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "And you kept it," he said. "On the drive. I keep everything I photograph for a client for 7 years. Then we review the retention schedule." "You're not a client." I paused. I wasn't going to delete it. "No," he said. "Of course not." He looked at the rosemary plant, then at the bowl, then at me. "The Dressel agreement?" he said. "It was in the 3rd drawer. Under D. Marcus moved the 3rd drawer contents to the 2nd drawer and I was not." He stopped. "I could not find it when Jonah asked for it last week." "I know, but you had it." "Yes." He nodded slowly. This is how he processes things, not by speaking them through but by arriving at them through a series of confirmations that each slightly shift the shape of what he understands. "Nadia," he said. "Yes." He looked at the bowl again. I watched him look at it. "Your mother kept everything," he said. "You know how she organized the house." It was not a question. "Yes." I did not understand, when she was alive, what the system was. I used it. I never learned it. He paused. When she was gone, I could not find things for 2 years. I had to learn what she had always done, so I could do it myself. He turned back to look at me. She would have noticed the filing cabinet. He said it simply, not as a compliment, not as comparison, as recognition of a fact. Something in me, not dramatic, not title, something small and specific moved. I went back to the shop on a Thursday evening, a week after the Jonah meeting. Jonah had confirmed that morning that Dressel's attorney had reviewed the actual agreement and was recommending that their client withdraw the claim. It would take a few more weeks to formalize, but the exposure my father had been facing was almost certainly gone. The new supplier contract was intact. The $180,000 was not going anywhere. The shop closes at 6. I arrived at 5:47. Through the front window, I could see that Greta had already put on her coat. She was coming out the door as I reached it. "He's still in back," she said. She held the door for me. I left the coffee on. She walked toward the parking lot without looking back. I went in. The front of the shop was in its end-of-day state. The register counted. The display straightened. The overhead lights on their dimmer setting. The bowls in the window caught the last of the October light and held it in a specific way that I noticed, because I had been noticing that bowl and light combination since I was a child, watching my mother set the table. My father was at his desk. He had not yet put on his coat. He was looking at the rosemary plant with the scissors in his hand. He looked up. "You came again." "I was nearby," I said. This was not entirely true. He gestured at the chair. I sat. He set the scissors down. He had not yet trimmed the rosemary. It was Monday's work done on a Thursday because he had had a difficult week and some of the usual rhythms had slipped. I noticed this and did not say so. "The Dressel thing is finished," he said. "Almost. A few weeks." Jonah said the same. He looked at me. "I should thank you properly." "You don't have to." "Nadia." His voice had the specific quality it gets when he wants to be precise about something. "Let me finish." I let him finish. "I should thank you properly," he said again. "You had that document for 2 years. You carried it with you, without telling anyone. And when it was needed, you gave it immediately. Without," he paused. "Without asking for anything. It wasn't mine to ask for." "No, but some people would have." He looked at the bowl on the desk. "Marcus would have managed it differently." I did not say anything. This was true and I did not need to confirm it. "Marcus is good at many things," my father said. "He is not good at seeing what is already there. He sees what needs to be built. He does not always notice what is already holding everything up." He said this without heat. Observation, not accusation. He loved Marcus. He was not wrong about him. Outside the window, the light had changed to the specific gray-gold of October evenings, when the sun has just dropped below the buildings. The rosemary plant was silhouetted against it. 15 years of Monday mornings with scissors. The most tended thing in a room that was otherwise tended by nobody, until Nadia showed up with a phone camera at a birthday party. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yes." "The bowl," I said. "On your desk. Did you know Mom organized insurance documents by the length of the cancellation notice?" My father looked at the bowl. Something shifted in his face, not surprise. Exactly. More like the look of someone who has been carrying a question and suddenly understands that the other person has been carrying the same one. "No," he said. "I didn't. I knew she had a system. I didn't know what it was. I figured it out when I was helping you look for the car insurance documents after she died. It took me a while and then it was obvious." I paused. "She never explained it to anyone. She just did it." "Yes," he said. "That's what I do," I said. "The version she had was for the house. Mine is for other people's houses." I stopped. "I know it doesn't look like what Marcus does. I know it doesn't look like anything from the outside. But when it's not there?" "You cannot find the Dressel agreement," my father said. "You cannot find the Dressel agreement," I said. He nodded. He looked at the bowl for a moment longer. Then he looked at me. "There is more," he said. "What do you mean?" "In the filing cabinet. The other drawers." He paused. "When Marcus reorganized it, he was certain he understood the original system. I think he may have been mistaken about some of it. There are other files I am not able to locate when I look for them." I looked at the filing cabinet. 4 drawers. I had photographed all 4, 2 years ago. "I have photographs of all 4 drawers," I said. My father looked at the filing cabinet. "I know." He turned back to me. "Can you look at the rest of it?" He said it simply. Not as an apology, not as compensation, not as a grand gesture toward a new beginning between us. Just, "Can you look at the rest of it?" The question of a man who has a filing problem and knows who can solve it. But underneath the question was something else, which I did not name out loud and which he did not name out loud, and which existed in the room the way the rosemary existed on the windowsill, tended, present, requiring no explanation. Yes, I said. I can look at the rest of it. He poured coffee from the pot Greta had left. He set a cup in front of me. We sat in the back office while the October light finished its change from gold to gray, and I told him what the other drawers had contained, and he listened in the way he listens to things that matter without interrupting, without rushing to respond, with the specific quality of attention that he has given to everything in his life that he has decided to take seriously. Here is what happened, and what did not. The Dressel dispute was formally withdrawn 6 weeks after Marcus's Wednesday night phone call. Jonah submitted the photographs as documentation. Dressel's attorney confirmed that the claimed provision did not appear in the executed agreement. There was no litigation. There was no payment. My father's new supplier contract remained in place. His retirement account did not lose $180,000. Marcus called me when the withdrawal was finalized. He said, "Good outcome." And then, "You should have mentioned you had that sooner." I thought about this for a long time. I still think about it. He was not wrong that knowing I had the photographs sooner would have been useful. He was wrong about the reason I hadn't mentioned it. I hadn't mentioned it because the last time I mentioned anything about the filing cabinet, he told me it wasn't necessary. I hadn't mentioned it because I had absorbed, over years, the lesson that my observations were not the kind of observations the family needed to hear. I hadn't mentioned it because when you are told enough times that you are organized but it doesn't matter, you eventually stop saying things that you are certain the other person will agree don't matter. I did not say any of this to Marcus. What I said was, "Noted." And then we ended the call. I do not want to make Marcus the villain here. He is not the villain. He is someone who grew up in the same family I grew up in, with the same set of unexamined assumptions about which kinds of work were worth discussing at dinner, and he acted within those assumptions, without realizing they were assumptions. He still largely acts within them. I do not think this will change quickly. I think it may change slowly, over time, the way most things change in families, not through confrontation, but through the accumulation of evidence that the assumptions were wrong. I want to tell you something about the 92 photographs. I have them on the backup drive. I used one of them to resolve the Dressel dispute. The other 91 were not needed for that purpose. But in the 3 hours I spent on the backup drive the night after Marcus's call, after I had found photograph 47, after I had sent it to Jonah, after I had folded the laundry that was still in the basket on the counter, I looked at all 92. I saw things I had not been thinking about when I took them. A vendor agreement with an expiration date that had already passed, 2 years ago, meaning it had been operating on an agreement that was technically expired. A correspondence file that contained letters about a lease negotiation that I had no other record of and whose outcome I did not know. A set of customs documents from 2017 that were stacked incorrectly, the most recent on the bottom, the oldest on top, which would make finding anything specific almost impossible. I wrote notes. I transferred them to a legal pad. I did not send those notes to Marcus. I did not send them to my father. That night, I put them in a folder on my desk at home, labeled with the date, and went to sleep. I want to be honest about something. When I was photographing that filing cabinet 2 years ago, I did not know I would ever use the photographs. I was doing it because I could not do it because the disorder was real, and I had the means to document it, and I did not need a reason beyond that. But I also cannot be certain that on some level, having those photographs was not a form of insurance. A hedge, against being told, again, that my professional judgment did not apply here. I do not know whether that motivation was wrong. I think it was human. I think the question of whether it was wise depends on what you consider the purpose of keeping a record. To me, a record is not a weapon. It is not a negotiating position. It is not leverage. A record is an attempt to ensure that what happened can be found again when it is needed. That is all. That is already a lot. But I am also aware that the line between keeping a record and keeping a backup plan for your own vindication is not always as clear as I would like it to be. Here is the question I want to leave you with. There is a kind of work that is only noticed when it fails, not when it succeeds. When it succeeds, things simply continue, agreements are honored, documents are found, disputes do not become crises. The people who do this work are, in successful moments, invisible. They are only seen when something goes wrong. And even then, what is seen is the problem, not the years of attention that prevented all the previous problems. If that is the work you do, If you are the person in the room who notices things, who keeps records, who prevents the invisible problems, how do you know whether you are valued? And if you don't know, does that change anything about whether you keep doing it? I do not have a clean answer. What I have is this. I know why I did what I did in that back office, 2 years ago. I know it was the right thing to do regardless of whether anyone ever needed photograph 47. And I know that when I handed it over, I did not wait to see whether the gratitude would be proportional. That is not because I didn't want proportional gratitude. I did. I still do. It is because what my father needed was the document, and I had the document, and making him wait, while I decided how much acknowledgement was sufficient, was not something I was willing to do to a 72-year-old man who had built something over 30 years, and was watching it become vulnerable, because of a piece of paper nobody could find. Some things are more important than being right about who should have been listening. 6 months after the Dressel withdrawal, the filing cabinet in my father's back office has a system. I came every Saturday morning for 3 months, 3 hours, 7:30 to 10:30, before the shop opened. I went through all 4 drawers. I created an index. I established a retention schedule. I found the expired vendor agreement and flagged it for renewal. It had already been informally extended for 2 years, which Greta confirmed, but the extension had never been written down. I found the lease correspondence and traced the outcome through a folder of documents that had been filed under general because whoever filed them had not known what else to call them. I found 4 other documents that needed attention of various kinds. I kept notes. I labeled everything. I created a master log that anyone could read without training. My father made coffee every Saturday. He sat in the front of the shop while I worked. He did not ask questions or offer opinions. He was available if I needed to know something. 3 of the Saturdays, Greta was there too, and she knew things about the files that I would not have been able to reconstruct without her, which vendor had signed the extension, which correspondence was from a person who had since retired. On the 4th Saturday, Marcus arrived at 8:15. He did not call ahead. He had, I think, been circling the decision to come for some time. He came in and looked at what I was doing and he said, "Do you want help?" I said, "Do you know what goes where?" "No," he said. "Then sit with Dad," I said. "I'll tell you when I find something he should know about." He sat with Dad. He drank coffee and looked at the front window where the display had recently changed to a set of dark green serving dishes with a yellow border. After a while, I heard them talking about whether the new display was drawing foot traffic or not. Marcus had a theory based on where foot traffic came from on that street. My father disagreed. I could hear them going back and forth without conclusion, which is how they have always talked about the business, and which I had always understood as a form of love between them. At 9:40, I came to the front with my legal pad and showed them both the list of things I had found that needed decisions. My father went through it item by item. Marcus asked questions when he had them. I answered. We finished in 20 minutes. When Marcus left, he paused at the door. He looked at me. "This is good work," he said. "What you've done in there." He said it the way he says things he has had to decide to say carefully, with the awareness that he is saying something he is not entirely sure how to say. It was not an apology. It was not a reckoning. It was a sentence from someone who is beginning, slowly, to revise an assumption he did not know he had made. "I know," I said. He nodded. He left. The ceramic bowl is still on my father's desk. He has not moved it. Last Saturday, he put a pair of reading glasses in it, the spare pair he keeps for when he misplaces the other. They sat next to the 2 paper clips and the coin. Small things that needed a place. Things he kept. The rosemary plant is denser now. It has had 8 months of uninterrupted Mondays. My father trims it with a different pair of scissors. He found the original pair in the wrong drawer during my reorganization and switched to a better pair that he now keeps in the top desk drawer, labeled with a small strip of paper tape. He labeled it himself. His handwriting. Last Saturday morning, I was finishing the final section of the index, the correspondence files, which were the most complicated because they required judgment about which category something belonged to, not just where it physically was. My father came in at 9 with coffee. He set a cup beside me. He looked at what I was doing. "Almost done?" he said. "One more drawer," I said. He nodded. He stood there for a moment, looking at the filing cabinet, at the labeled tabs, at the system that was finally the shape it should have been. "Your mother," he said, kept a folder for every person she had ever had a long conversation with. People she had known for years, people she had met once, what they had told her, what they cared about, so she would remember, the next time she saw them, what mattered to them. I had not known this. "I found it after she was gone," he said. 312 people. You were in it. You were the longest entry by a lot. He went back to the front. I sat for a moment with my coffee and my legal pad, and the fourth drawer still closed in front of me. Outside the window, the rosemary was doing what it always does, growing toward the light, in the small space it had been given, with the patience of something that has never been asked to be anything other than what it is. I opened the fourth drawer. I found a label. Someone had made it years ago, her handwriting. Not mine, not my father's, the handwriting of a woman who had organized a household so carefully that her children were still living inside the system she built 26 years after she had taught herself the work. The label said, "Ongoing, not urgent." I kept it. I made a new one for the drawer, in my own handwriting, with my own system. I put the old one in my bag to take home. Some records you keep because they might be needed. Some records you keep because they are the only evidence, left behind by someone who has gone, that the work was done. I keep both kinds.